Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. When I sat down with Lynne, she gave us an update on the ongoing development of new Call of Cthulhu material. I'm going to jump across to that interview in just a moment, but first, please remember to subscribe to the Chaosium YouTube channel. It helps us a lot and it lets us make more content like this. Thanks.
Well, the next one up is A Time to Harvest, which was based on an organised play campaign from a couple of years ago. So that has been updated and revised based on all the playtest feedback that we got from the organised play groups. And that's been obviously fully illustrated. And that's just having its index checked now as we speak to make sure that that's all fully functioning so that all those hyperlinks are there and actually doing what they need to be doing and going to the right places. So yes, that's the next one. The strange things are afoot in the hills of Vermont. And your investigators basically get roped in because they go there on a field trip from Miskatonic University. And then it all, as you would expect, goes horribly wrong from there. So you're delving into the local folklore of this particular area, and there are various people attempting to, manipulate the investigators to suit their own ends, as there always is.
I can see an interesting link between that and Amidst the Ancient Trees in the Keeper's Rulebook, which I think is also set in Vermont. So that might be a nice stepping
Mm.
stone. If we're talking for a time to harvest, is there a central pitch to how this is different from some of the other, grand campaigns that Chaosium has published? If Horror on the Orient Express is defined by being bound to the train, and Mask of Nyarlathotep is bound by being incredibly sort of world jumping and open, sprawling, what sets A Time to Harvest apart?
It's very much concentrated on folklore and how that in that whole thing about there's always a kernel of truth in fairy tales and folklore. So it's worked around that. In terms of where you go, it's reasonably limited in scope in terms of hopping about. You do get to go to a few places. There's an option to go to Canada, if you really want to. Um, but that's an aside. It's not part of the core plot. So really, pretty much everything takes place around Vermont and Arkham. So it's very self-contained.
What's going to get people most excited about this? Is there like a key set piece moment that you can spoil, or a hint of a particular scenario or something?
I mean, I think the front cover is going to give certain amounts of it away. There's an awful lot to do with there's two competing sets of bad guys, shall we put it that way? And the investigators are going to find themselves in the middle. And they've basically got to try and survive both sets.
Is A Time to Harvest, is going to be a grand, big, story. Is there anything else that Call of Cthulhu fans can be looking forward to? Any source books or other pieces that are on the horizon, or is that sort of the big next thing?
After that, the next book that is currently in layout is Cults of Cthulhu, which is Chris Lackey, Mike Mason. I can't remember if there's anyone else involved on the writing front. So that's looking at the Cthulhu cult and developing that more. I've not actually had anything to do with that book, so I can't really tell you any more than that. But it certainly should be very interesting and really looks into more about the big guy because there's not an awful lot actually has him in it or focuses particularly on his courts, and it was something that Mike really wanted to look at and get going. So that's actually said that's in layout at the moment. And then just finishing up, Mike's just done his editing pass on Regency Cthulhu, so I've got a few corrections I need to go do for that, and then that will be moving into layout. So that's a little mini setting based on something Andrew Peregrine sent us a while ago, which his original pitch was a series of scenarios that were set in different historical eras. And now, being a bit of a Regency fan, there was a Regency fan in there. There was a Regency scenario in there, so I kind of sold the idea that a Regency setting would be a nice self-contained book, something like Reign of Terror. So it's very defined historical period with a setting and a couple of scenarios in there. that, if you want to do your Jane Austen meets Cthulhu, you can do that. If you want to do your Sharps Rifles meets Cthulhu, you can do that too. Although we are tending much more towards the Jane Austen side of things in this one. So, like I said, I've got a few bits and bobs that I need to finish up on that, and then that will be going into the layout pipeline. So those are the next three. Beyond that, obviously, we have a lot of big things going on, which I'm not going to mention because I'm not the best person to talk about them.
For those people who are interested in Regency Cthulhu, is that going to be just setting information? Will we see some scenarios there too?
Setting information, how to design your Regency character. So we give you a setting of a town called Tarraford, with the local businesses and all the NPCs, and there are 2 scenarios.